Welcome to the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. I'm Larry Wagner, and I've spent 30 years working with seniors where I was a certified senior advisor and the last 15 years in the home buying industry as a certified senior transition specialist, where I specialize in dealing with seniors going through a transition in their lives. This podcast is for seniors, those with seniors they love, and people who work in the senior community. In each episode, we bring on a guest who works to improve the lives of seniors. This podcast is your key to unlocking senior resources. Hello, I'm here with Angel Ortiz from Senior Care Companions. Welcome, Angel.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks for having me.
So you are in the senior care industry. Correct. And I'm sure as a child you weren't saying, I want to be in the senior care industry. So what got you to here?
So great question. I started, I went to college to be a school teacher. So I've always had, that part of me being compassionate and, helping people in my community for to be specific. I grew up in Central Islip. So, I wanted to give back to the community. So back in like 2009, okay. The school district had to make some changes with their budget, had to make some layoffs. So unfortunately, I didn't have tenure, so I was one of the teachers that got laid off. And I started looking into a different career, not on intentionally, but I was approached to work for the Office for Aging in Suffolk County.
Oh, interesting.
So I became an employee from 2009 till about 2012, working as a senior advocate. So I would go around and meet with seniors at the senior centers, at some of the centers in the town of like Islip, town of Huntington. So that's how I got into working with seniors, was helping them, and I saw that there was a big need, right? An advocate helping them to kind of navigate them through the process of, applying for Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, and things like that.
It's so complicated.
It is.
And Long Island has such an aging population because young people can't afford to live here.
I know.
So it's a double-ended problem. But you're serving a real purpose and a real need. I am a relatively newly minted senior, depending on what you call a senior. And I remember going through the Medicaid issues. I'm a smart guy, and I was in the insurance and financial business for 30 years.
Wow.
And I was dumbfounded by Medicaid.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine an average senior who may have been a construction worker or school teacher, doesn't matter, going through this process with no background in finance or insurance. So that is where you come in.
Yeah, and the thing is that even myself, you have to take the time to, it's a case by case. Right. It doesn't apply in general for everyone, but a lot of people have this portraying, that Medicaid is just for a certain type of, individual, which it can apply to anyone. Right. It just depends. Yes, it does depend on your income. But anyone can really apply for it. And then, then they'll tell you exactly what type of community plan you'll be eligible for.
My 2-year-old granddaughter's on Medicaid with a disability. It has nothing with age or finance.
Nope. That's the same thing with my niece. My niece is autistic, and she had to go through the process. My sister had to go through the process of applying for Medicaid. And luckily, my wife, who has been doing this for a long time, was able to assist my sister in the process, but it's overwhelming. They ask for a lot of information, so a lot of people are intimidated, and they just kind of give up. And so, people like myself and others that are advocate to try to help an individual to get onto a community plan, it's important, so it's nice to have friends and business friends that are in the field that I can refer them to and say, call this person, that is familiar how to, Medicaid works, because it does change every so often, right? A year or every 2 years, whatnot. But it's good to always, be advised by someone who is who practices this, this law It's a lot of red tapes. So,
Oh God, yes.
so you want to be able to get with someone who is familiar with how to apply for this, and will navigate you in the right direction. Sure.
So you leave that job with the government agency.
Yeah.
And you go where?
I ended up working with Catholic Charities back in 2013, right after Hurricane Superstorm Sandy had made an impact on Long Island. I worked as a case manager, working in Long Beach, Oceanside, Island Park, helping individuals recover from their losses. So I met a lot of seniors in that job as well, because there was a lot of seniors who were not computer savvy, who needed to do a lot of things online.
Yes.
Apply through FEMA, try to go through these recovery, programs, but they all had to, mostly had to go online, apply for it. So that's where I found the need in that as well. And so that's what continued my journey through working with seniors in that population.
Interesting. So, school teacher working with kids,
Yeah.
working with aging, working with FEMA. We dealt with a lot of seniors.
Yeah.
Next step.
Next step was working for, got in touch with Senior Care Companions. The owner, Dr. Bernard Singstock, him and I have known each other since I was 16 years old. I'm 46 now, so
That's a long time.
a long time.
2/3 of your life.
Yeah, so I met him as a patient. I was in high school playing football. I had a football injury that he was my doctor, and he had asked me to get on a plan to recovery, because it was my senior year of high school. So I wanted to get back on the field to play baseball, and he did that. He was able to have me go into PT 3 to 4 times a week. So I guess he liked the way my work ethic was, the way I was disciplined, committed. So he came to my baseball games in high school, college. So we met, we kept in touch the whole time. And then back in 2012 is when I saw him at a gym, and he had approached me and said, I have a company, and I need people that I can help run the company with him. So that's how I was able to get back into senior care again.
Interesting.
To help.
What's interesting is the way he sort of selected you.
Yeah.
I'll encounter people in all sorts of walks of life. A cashier or somebody.
Right.
Since I sit there and give them a card, if you ever want a job, call, because you can tell they've got the right attitude, the right spirit, and so on, and the intelligence. And he saw that in you, and now you're there since 2012.
2012, I did leave in I joined him in 2015. Because I continued working with Catholic Charities to help. I wanted to complete my, it was a grant that they had. So I wanted to commit my time that I had committed to them. And then in January 2015, I joined Dr. Bernie and Senior Care. And
so that's what he saw in you, the fact that you stayed, because you made a commitment.
Yeah.
You stayed with Catholic Charities. Even he's willing to take you on then.
Sure, yeah. So, and then basically after that, I started working with Senior Care as a coordinator, just coordinating, helping people getting onto a case, providing care for seniors. And then in 2018, I went to Atria in Bayshore.
Yeah.
And I worked there as a residence relations director. I loved working there. I'd made a lot of connections there, learned about how the industry and the assisted living works. And then in 2020, when COVID happened,
that changed
changed everything. Yeah. Changed a lot of things. So unfortunately I ended up leaving, Atria. And then in 2021, I came back to Senior Care Companions to help, Dr. Bernie run the company. And I've been there since.
Very good.
And I love it.
And you love it. Very good. I love it. I like it when people say I love it, because working with seniors, working with children, working with seniors,
Yeah.
they're two extremes that you really have to have a passion for it to do it well.
Absolutely.
And the fact you started with the children, but what were you teaching, curiously?
Elementary.
Elementary. That's why he's curious. You wanted the opposite.
Yeah. We're very, from the extreme, from like kids
Right.
to seniors, and it was the same concept. It was just, if seniors want someone to listen to them, whatever they're complaining about, or whether if it's complaining or they're praising about something, they just want someone. They love having company, having a companion with them. So I found that, I had that gift of just sitting with someone, listening to what they had to say, and then trying to help them if they had any needs.
It's so important. Oftentimes, seniors are left alone. And the kids don't live locally, especially in today's environment. People leaving, you and I spoke earlier, people leaving Long Island, and they can't afford to stay here. So the parents are left here, and the kids are somewhere else. The days of the parents moving to Florida, now the kids are moving to Florida. Yeah. Well, there's a storm happening today. But one of our employees is down there, and that's issues already. But putting that aside, it definitely is a unique kind of person, because seniors have just this need for companionship. So not every senior, but many. And that's the biggest part I find when we're, as a home buyer, the bulk of the people we buy homes from are from seniors.
Yeah.
And we spend almost all our time listening to them, because that's what they feel they need. The house is almost secondary. They want a companion. They want a friend at that moment.
Absolutely.
And we're happy to take that role on. Everyone in my company knows that's what we do. You're there to help people, and the thing you can do at that moment is listen. And the important part, honestly, the technical part is what you do as far as finding the aid, the assistance, and so on. But the compassionate part is the listening.
Yeah, that's the key. It's a key component to finding someone, a good fit for the family, that the family feels comfortable allowing a stranger come into their home.
Right.
So it's important to make that, we're the initial contact, right? From the phone call up until we make that visit at the home. And then we have our coordinators in the office that are very, very imperative to this piece, because they're the ones that are looking for the right caregiver for this case. So it's, we have all important roles, and also the HR, human resource in our office, excuse me, they have an important role as well to making sure that we're hiring, good employees, especially these days. A lot of people are changing their careers, or they'll work for several agencies, and they'll cancel with you, but then they'll go to that other job. So it's very challenging to try to find the right person. So it's so we have a great team, and I love my team. I'm grateful for Dr. Bernie for allowing us to work as a team and providing care on Long Island.
You said it's a team of 8 people. I've interviewed others in a similar business to yours, and typically it's 1 or 2 people.
Sure.
So if 8 people, there's more depth and more breadth as to the services the way you can help.
Yeah.
So question, specifically, what do you do? So if someone, what's the reason? First, let me just, before I get to that question.
Yeah.
Do you get a call from the senior? You get a call from the children of the senior more often. Which is it? Or is it?
It's a little bit of both, but I find that more children, more of the children are calling us to inquire about, what does it cost? What type of services you provide? Are you licensed? You want to make sure that that you're providing all that information to that caller, because, they this might be their first time ever having this type of conversation, and so they want to know that whether or not, if you're experienced and you have the credentials as far as like the proper license, insurance, that the caregivers are an employee of yours, or are they an independent contractor. So there's a lot of pieces that you want to make sure that you're informing that caller about, because like you said, when a senior does call us,
Right.
it can be challenging sometimes, because the seniors, they're very conservative in terms of how much does it cost.
Right.
And then when you tell them the cost, they're like, oh my gosh, like, well, I'm on Medicare, I'm on Social Security.
Right.
This is all I have. And that's the part that breaks my heart, is that, there's nothing that I can do about that part.
Right. Can't change their income.
No, that's just the way the government is. And But the thing is that, I try to explain to them about what sources are out there, resources.
Right.
Whether to get a grant to help with the home care,
Right.
or whether it's to advise them to call this Medicaid group that will help them to get Medicaid. So so those are the calls that we're getting, mostly from the children, though.
Right. That's what I asked the question, sort of anticipating the answer.
Yeah.
Even in our business, people call, say, mom has a house to sell. Not mom calls. It's oftentimes the daughter, the son.
Yeah.
And I know with my own parents. My parents moved to independent living, and I'm the one who found 3 places for them to look at.
Wow.
Yeah. They didn't want to go. That was a whole other story. But it was, and again, the kids take an instrumental role in their parents' care. Life's a circle. So it is what it is. But so let's discuss, what kind of services do you provide to the people with whom you work?
Yeah, no, great question, Larry. So basically what we do in the homes, we will do light housekeeping. And when I say light housekeeping, I mean light housekeeping. A lot of people, they get confused about, when we say cleaning, they think that, they can have the person to clean windows, but it's really basic light housekeeping, meal preparation, laundry assistance. We can wash, dry, and fold. We can help with.
I love folding laundry. I wouldn't want to give that up.
I know it is therapeutic sometimes. Just sitting there, just folding. We provide medication reminders. Someone needing, if they need to be ambulated, to help them, with assisting with that. And also transportation, if they need, transporting to doctor's appointments, food shopping, errands. We also do just companionship, where someone can just sit with someone, do a puzzle, color.
But what's one is that before? They want someone to be with.
That's it. That's all they want, Because like you said, a lot of scenes are, unfortunately, alone.
Yes.
And so, those types of services that we provide are very important because it's part of their everyday activity, daily living.
Correct.
So we can assist with that as well as making sure that the person gets in and out of the shower, just making sure that they're okay and supervise them. So those are the services that we provide.
How many of your services are covered, if any, by long-term care insurance?
So that's a great question because each policies are different,
right.
Depending on how the policy was written.
That's a fair answer.
Yes. Yeah. So some long-term care agencies, they cover up to, could be 100%, depending on how many hours you're providing.
Right.
And then some policies only cover up to maybe $50 a day.
But it's putting the dollars aside, but the actual, forget the amount of coverage. That's on the policy, sure. But the activities you're providing are covered? Like as well, you can do laundry, and that's a covered activity from insurance policy perspective. Well, you don't list it as that.
No, we can list that because they do get an assessment from the long term. They'll send a nurse, the registered nurse, to come to the home, do an assessment.
Right.
So they want to know, are there at least 2 needs or 3 needs that the person needs, whether it be, assisting with dressing them, putting on their socks, compression socks, shoes, meal preparations, and stuff like that. So those are covered under the long-term care.
Okay.
Because we, as an agency, we will then provide the long-term care company without care notes. So that way they know that we're providing the care that the individual needs.
My folks had long-term care insurance. My mother actually made a claim. I used to sell her when I was in a financial business. And I remember every week I'd have to sign off on it. My mother had 24 hours worth of aids. Yeah. And you had to sign off on the aids and so on every week to get reimbursed and so on. But I know home care is a different animal than what they cover and don't cover. So based on what you do, for those fortunate people to have a long-term care policy, you can afford one, you'll cover. That's the key. Again, the size of your policy will determine how much coverage you have.
Absolutely.
But the activities are covered. So now, do you have traditional aids that come into these traditional aids? This is what you're talking about as well.
Correct.
Now, do you have, and you said you dealt with medication. Are you dispersing medication or just sort of putting the pill boxes themselves, so the daily pill boxes?
No, yeah, great question. So yeah, we don't organize the medication. Like we don't take the pills out of the capsule and put it in the pill box. Usually that's the family's responsibility.
I know that's an issue. Oh, here it is an issue.
Huge liability because the type of license that we have, we're not allowed to handle that.
It would be a nurse of some sort, I would imagine.
Correct. Yeah. So what we do is we'll have the family set it up.
Yep.
And then our caregiver will then just say, okay, usually the families will have it in a cup, icy cup or some, and then we'll just remind them.
Right. Got it.
But what's nice is that you have a group, a company called Avanti who does pharmaceutical, managing. You have ChemRx as well that will deliver the medication to the homes and like blister packs.
Correct. For the morning, you have to make.
Yeah. So those make it easier to kind of keep track because a lot of times seniors will sometimes miss, maybe take an extra pill.
Right.
Because they get confused at a certain time of the day.
Yeah.
So
that's never been my problem. My problem is remember to take them at all.
Yeah.
The extra's never been a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. They are absolutely.
So now the aides that work for the company, is that a floating sort of portfolio of people that you send to homes? Because I assume you just bring people in on call.
Yeah. So what we'll have people that we'll hire them.
Right.
And then they'll let us know what their availability is. And then based on that, when we get a case, we have a software that we can identify, okay, this is the shift that we need. These are the caregivers that are available for that.
Got it.
And then we'll reach out to those caregivers. I think we have about, let's say just a little under 200 caregivers.
Oh, wow. I wasn't expecting that number.
Yeah, it ranges from like mid 100, to like 170. So it depends on the time of the year. Sometimes that also plays into that role. But the thing is that even though we have those many caregivers, it doesn't mean that they're all available.
Correct.
Because there's some caregivers that are, I think they apply with the agency and then, but they don't accept any work. So it's hard because also the distance, where, depending on where the caregiver lives, where the case is, that also plays into the fact because they don't want to drive, they don't want to spend, the gas. And so it's difficult. Those are the challenges that we're having here. And a lot of people on Long Island, as we all know, it requires, transportation. You need to go to the doctors, you need to go to the pharmacy or to the supermarket. It requires people to, get in the car. And then that's the other part is the liability, so most caregivers don't want to drive their own vehicle and stuff. So it can be unique, in the sense of that.
That's an issue about driving. A caregiver's allowed to drive the family car, the person they're taking care of?
Yeah. So we ask the families, do they prefer to allow the caregiver to drive their own vehicle?
Right.
And if they are, then, we'll get all the information, on file. Or if they prefer to just have the caregiver drive their own vehicle.
Right.
So we give them that option.
Got it.
We prefer that the family has their car because that way we don't charge for the mileage.
Mm-hmm.
The caregiver feels more comfortable driving their vehicle. And everyone's okay.
And typically the seniors are more comfortable in their own car as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Because they prefer not to get into like an SUV because it might be too hard to get in and out.
Yeah.
So that also plays an important role.
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Larry.
And I'm Ben. We're the father and son team of Leave the Key Homebuyers, and we want to buy your house.
We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through.
So if you're considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out and see how we can help.
Do you have an outdated home?
No need to update anything.
Have a home that needs repairs?
Don't bother with repairs.
Don't want to take everything with you?
Leave whatever you want behind.
Dreading the headaches that come with agents?
Sell your home without paying a commission.
Dreading prying neighbors attending open houses and passing judgment on your home?
No need for public showings.
When you sell to us, you'll have all the certainty of closing on your timeline, not someone else's, and there's absolutely no pressure.
Visit leavethekey.com or call us today for a no-obligation offer at 631-388-7771 if you want to sell your home today.
But very interesting. This people don't realize how many different services you can provide, as you said, from driving to doing a puzzle. People don't think of that, and socialization is so important. Do you do 24-hour care, or is that you do? So
We do, yeah. So we do hourly.
right?
Our minimum is 4 hours,
It is a typical.
per day. And then we have a 24-hour care where it can be split to two 12-hour shifts.
Yeah.
Which is a little bit more costly.
Yeah.
And then we also offer a live-in where that you have someone there 24 hours.
Right.
And they'll work there, but they're entitled to their rest and stuff throughout the day. But we'll offer that as a live-in caregiver.
Is that a less expensive option than the 24 hours? Yeah, it is. I would think so.
Yeah, it's almost double if you do the 12 hours.
Wow.
Compared to if you just pay a flat rate for just the day.
My mother had the 12 hours.
Yeah.
Which just the insurance covered 100% of that. So it just made it. But we wanted the person 24 hours, but she had a family. And she wasn't about to give up her family and her husband and so on to say she adored my folks. Matter of fact, she took care of my father. My folks lived together in this apartment. It was a 2-bedroom apartment in this facility. And she adored him, and she spent so much time talking to him. So my mother was basically a vegetable with no interaction. She took care of my mother, but she socialized with my father for her sake and his.
Yeah.
And it was so beneficial for both of them.
Both of them, that's
But
true.
I would love to have had the 24 hours. But you need a person the right personal life to give up 24 hours a day.
Right. It's a big commitment. They're sacrificing, a lot, to do something like that.
Correct. But and again, that takes these caretakers. We were very fortunate
Yeah.
to get the right ones, and we only had one not good one that was there one day. And you went with these horror stories, and this is over 3.5 years.
Yeah.
One day of one bad one.
Wow.
That's a really
You are lucky.
We were very fortunate,
Yeah.
and we're still friendly with the main character, the one who wanted 24 hours. We still communicate with her.
Yeah.
When my mother passed, I had to come over. She called me to let me know. I had to come over and console her.
Wow.
Because she was so heartbroken.
Yeah.
That losing my mother, I wasn't heartbroken near as much as she was. Not because I'm cold. My mother was a vegetable, right? It was long.
You as a parent,
I was very hurt, and it was she wouldn't want to be like this. But this woman, and only met my mother as a vegetable.
Wow.
So she didn't get to know my mother as a wonderful person, which she was, and yet she developed this love for her because it's in her. And I would never be a good aide. I'm a nice guy,
right?
But it's a special person. I'm not that special person,
right?
And that's where HR is so important in your business.
Yes.
It's not hiring the accountant in your company.
No.
It's hiring these people, which is an ongoing process. It's an ebb and flow. I'm sure people become unavailable, they move out, whatever the case.
Yeah.
So I hadn't thought about the HR component to you. This most people I talk to, again, the company's 1 or 2 people.
Right.
They hire the aides, but I think just the owner does it. And
Right. Yeah, they'll screen them, they'll interview them. But the HR, we're fortunate to have, good employees where, they'll invest that time to talk with the caregiver, make sure that they're a good asset or good fit for our company. Sure. Because they're going to be representing our company. So, and it is challenging at times because, a lot of caregivers will come and give that great impression, saying, I want to be a caregiver. I want to work for your company. And then, the first assignment you get to them, they do a no call, no show.
yeah.
And that, it's unfortunate, but it's typical. A lot of times, a lot of agencies deal with that. And it's a very, case by case as well, because you don't know if that person has a, personal issue that's going on in their life that they had to make a decision, like a sudden decision. But then there are caregivers that do it because, they're just unresponsible, they're, unresponsible. And that's hard because, that reflects on the company. That's correct. So that's where we carefully will screen caregivers. We'll ask them to come in for an orientation class.
Right.
We'll walk with them up until we'll have them assigned to a case.
Right.
Hold their hand throughout the whole process. And we're very close with them. We call them. We do a lot of, a lot of times we'll do some events where we're sponsoring or supporting the ADRC or the Alzheimer's Association, LIAD, and we want our caregivers to be aware of what programs they have, and the families as well.
Right. You said you're a liaison. You deal with these outside. I met you through GPNY, the Jar for a lot of professionals in New York.
Yeah.
So you do a lot of that as part of your job?
I do, yeah. So yeah, years ago I found that that by attending to these meetings is where you get the networking aspect of it, where who's out there and who is your competitors and who are the people that you can network with. So yeah, that group GPNY, which is a great group of people, that's where I met you, and that's what I do as part of my job is trying to build bridges between our agencies and the communities, the professionals, whether if it's a hospital, rehab, assisted living, company like yours, So it's we like to be very unique and different in that way, to try to help the communities.
Because you were saying before we turned the cameras on, you were saying how part of your job is coordinating the care with the staff, with that 100 plus 200 people in your firm, in the company.
Yeah.
But also there's outside resources that you need to refer out.
Correct.
And you get to meet those through, first of all, your experience with Alwar, as well as through the places like GKMY and Sun and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
That's important. So what kind of services do you end up referring out, that you help, I don't want to say referring out, help coordinate is a better word.
Yeah. No, great question. So, recently I've had, where a family is not available to manage the medication.
Right.
So a lot of times I find that the medication component is a part where you can refer out to a company that does the home delivery of the medication. The other part is a podiatrist, just having someone to come in and cut their nails.
Oh, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
When I saw that, I was so shocked.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's important. And we have a doctor that we've been working with and referring to her. And she's very reliable. She's responsive, where she will communicate through a text or email. You also have things like having access to, going down to the first floor, going to the second floor. So you have 101 mobility.
Yep.
Kim, where
She was just on our podcast.
yeah, so she helped one of my clients as well, and installing our chairlift. And I mean, the guy is so ecstatic and very happy that he was able to get this chairlift because he wasn't able to come downstairs.
Right.
And now that we have the chairlift, now he sees a different world. He's like, I can go downstairs, I can sit downstairs, or I can come back up. So those are the type of resources that I find. And then also with, Medicaid and Medicare, there are individuals that do consulting with that. So, and then also from the assisted livings, like the communities that if an individual is not able to live at home,
Right.
it might be time for them to go into assisted living or nursing home. So, building those relationships with those type of professionals.
Let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself ever being called in and saying, we can't work with you at home, you really need to be out of the house? Or you find they're a client and they age out, if you will, of the services you provide? Is that more common? Or
That's more common, where we have someone that will start care with them and then they age out, they decline.
Right.
So that's where we find ourselves, because a lot of times, where I've worked in the assisted living side, and I see a lot of people that have been moved in, and a lot of times, some are very receptive to moving into a community like that, and then some are not because they feel that their family forced them to do it. So I think it's a case by case in that as well, because I've heard a lot of stories where people said, I wanted to just stay in my home.
Right.
And so, if they're capable, if they're physically and mentally able to, then I think that's a good setup for them. But if they're having frequent falls or they're forgetful, where it becomes a liability, then I think it's time to think about, maybe exploring that option of moving them into a community.
You say, don't want to go. And my parents almost felt like I forced them in, but they were so happy there. It was because they were home together with not a lot of activity.
Right.
And you go there, there's so much stuff. And my father and my father, the political groups, and having dinner with other people, actually having dinner.
Right. Having dinner.
They don't cook anymore for themselves. They were sharing English muffin for dinner kind of thing. That's not a dinner, and suddenly now they're having a real dinner. Yeah. So as much as people don't want to go, most people are very happy that they've gotten there. And then you could feel comfort. You help facilitate that next step. You help take care of them, coordinate the care, as long as they could have it at home.
Right.
And now they're ready for the next step.
Exactly. And that's where, I like working in that way because, I'm not a sales guy where I come in and I'm like telling the family, okay, this is what, I don't dictate, I'm not a dictator where I'm telling them this is what you need to do. I'll hear what their issue is, what their situation is, and then I'll give them options. I'll make recommendations, suggestions that, why don't you try this? But, I'm very easygoing. Like, I hear their situations, but I'm not one to say, oh, you need to do this, because I feel like, it's not, if it was successful for this person, it may not be for that. Or, it all depends on the individual.
It's your knowledge, their emotional comfort, you mix them together and come up with a happy solution.
Absolutely.
That's a good way. That's a good way of doing it. It's really the necessary way. But you say you're not sort of dictatorial, or whatever word you used.
Yeah.
And I'm sure some people are.
Oh, yeah.
This is what you need.
Right.
And that's not what they want to hear. No, that is not what senior citizens have been independent. Yeah. Started they're dependent. They don't like that already.
Right.
So for you to tell them right off the top, you're wrong. So for you to ask them, then you have A, B, or C, which is better for you, that's still in control. Even to say you want A, B, or C, you could do it your own way,
right.
But they still get to choose. Hopefully.
They still have,
right.
And that's what they want. They still want to feel like they're independent,
right.
And and their dignity. You want them to feel like they still have a purpose.
Yeah.
Because even though they're aging. Yes, there are certain situations where cognitively, you have to make that decision for them.
That they can't hold that.
But in a situation where if someone is alert and still able to make their own decisions, they've worked their whole lives, and they're at that age where, they don't want to be told what to do. So, when you approach them and say, okay, these are your options,
right?
However you say, like just mentioning, it could work and it may not work, but sure. But it all depends on how you approach them.
So in the years you've spent with Senior Care Companions, pick a story, whether it's a funny story, an endearing story, a successful story. If you have one story, one client you wanted to talk about, you had one?
I do.
I see the smile on your face.
I do. And Larry, and it's funny because this morning I was thinking about this and I was like, all right. He asks me, to share a story.
There you go. You're prepared for this.
I was prepared. So there was back in 2017. I met a couple, Mr. Everett Mayer and Agnes Mayer. They lived in East Islip. Mm-hmm. So they had Agnes. Unfortunately, at that time, she was diagnosed with cancer, terminal cancer. And so she had called our agency, spoke to our administrator at that time was Joanne, and Joanne had done a home visit, and they wanted to set up 24-hour care because they weren't sure how much time she had left.
Right.
So I remember going there one time as a follow-up to meet with Agnes, and she had told me, she said, this is something I want to make sure that I set up before my time comes because I want my husband, Everett, to be, taken care of. And she said, he's never cooked in his life. He's never done laundry. So I need someone that's going to come in and just take over. So I said, we'll make sure of that. And shortly after that, unfortunately, she had passed after that. And he was all alone. And this man, he was in his early 90s. This was his, probably his middle school sweetheart that got in with all his light.
I love the name too.
Yeah,
neighbors. It's like an album book almost.
Right. Is that time? Is
yeah,
generation?
Better word. Yeah.
So So him and I, we one day I went there to visit him because my office is not too far from where he was living, and we started having our routine of a daily coffee and cookies. Just I would stop there before going into the office. I asked my boss. I said, would it be okay if I stopped by Everett? He said, yeah, no problem. And we had a living, caregiver there. And it took about 2 or 3, to find the right caregiver for him.
It's all about personality.
Yeah, absolutely. And him and I had something in common where I was a huge baseball fan, loved playing the sport baseball. He was as well. I think at one time he said that he was actually asked to try out for the Mets. I don't know if that's true or not, but
We'll believe it is.
But right, I like believing in it. So, but yeah, I think and what was ironic was a coincidence was that I had a cousin who is in the tree service business,
right?
And Everett was huge into his garden, his trees. One day we're sitting outside and we see a red cardinal, and he told me the meaning of the red cardinal, which I never knew that it was.
There was a meaning.
Yeah, it was a meaning like it's like like a spirit that comes back. So he was telling me these stories, and I was giving compliment on the trees or how they're pruned, and he was like, well, I have someone that comes here and told me his name, and I was like, that's my cousin. And
Another connection.
Yeah, so we started talking about everything, and but just basically what really attracted me was the fact that he was he never had kids,
right?
Him and his wife were not able to have children, but they had a niece who was the one that was managing everything for him.
Was she local?
She was local. Okay. Yeah, she worked at Southside Hospital. Her and I still keep in contact. So she was very fortunate that we were there for her uncle and her aunt. But I kept my word for his wife to say, I'm going to check up on your husband.
Right.
And I was with him until he was in his bed in the hospital.
Really?
Until he passed. And it was hard because, I'd never gotten that close to someone,
Chills.
Yeah. So, and the thing is that, he made a huge impact on my life. And every time I see a cardinal now, I always think of him and his wife.
Uh-huh.
And I in my backyard, I have bird feeders and everything. And before he had passed, he had said to me, he had given me a bird feeder, a bird, like a bath type thing.
Right.
And a yard ornament. And I clean that thing every year. I power wash it and I make it clean. And I always thank him, So that's something that I really hold dear to my soul and my heart, because I think that's what it's about. It's about, making that connections with seniors, almost like if it was your own family.
Correct.
So it was really, really touching to have him, in my life, because at that time I needed someone like him in my life.
It served each of you.
It did.
It did. I ask everybody the same question. I'm going to say the question, but I'm not going to ask it to you.
Sure.
And that is, what sets you apart from the other people in your business? And you just answered the question.
Yeah.
You couldn't have given a better answer to the question I didn't ask. I can't imagine someone expressing more compassion than making a daily visit to sit down with a senior citizen who you didn't know before.
No.
You knew him through a professional relationship. He is your client.
Yeah.
But he was no longer your client. He became your friend. And I have nothing more to say. I'm retracting my question because you've already answered it. It's fascinating. That was a wonderful, wonderful story. I think you probably didn't have to dig too deep to come up with that story. Out of all the stories you would have to tell, that seems like the one that would be on the tip of your tongue.
Sure. And there's a lot of stories. I mean, I'm sure people have, but I've had a lot of, stories that I can share. But I mean, this was one that, like I said this morning, it kind of came to me. It was like, if this is what you want to share, this is the one you want to share.
That is the one you want. That is I deal with, this podcast is about dealing with people who deal with this in your community.
Yeah. And
I always ask, what's their story? What's the, funny, cute, whatever story? And this, I don't say the most intense, but this is the most personal I heard. Usually they're short. I had a great conversation. I was able to help them this way. But this got so far beyond your professional relationship.
Yeah.
So far beyond. How long did this go on for before he passed?
Wow. I would say it was about 2 years.
Wow.
About 2 years, almost 3, because we had a living caregiver that was there with him. And I tell you, I mean, he every time I went to his house in the morning,
Right.
we had this, it was the same, like, ritual, like just sitting down, having coffee, cookies, and it wasn't long conversations. They were about 10 minutes long. He didn't have much to say. He would say what he had to say, and then I would say what I had to say, and he would say, okay, you got to get to work now.
Right. He respected your time, but if he respected your comment.
Yes, exactly. And he would always say, he would always apologize, say, I'm sorry that made you late. I was like, it's okay. It was worth it. Right. It was worth it.
And so how did he get along with the age? You said it took a few to get there, which is typical, I'm sure.
Yeah.
For a guy who was married for decades and decades and decades.
Yes.
And now suddenly this aide is not replacing his wife, but and she was a living?
She was a living, yeah.
So it was another woman, the only other woman in his life has lived with him other than his mother.
Right.
How did that work? How long did that relationship lasted?
Well, in the beginning, we had several caregivers.
Correct. But once you found the right one.
Once we found the right one, it was probably like almost 2 years after. Yeah,
Because that's a long time.
She cared about him. He cared about her. It was to the point where he didn't want anyone else but her.
Yep.
So she was very special to him. He was special to her, and it was a great match. I mean, it was a great match, in the end, because that's what he needed, someone like her.
Correct.
To give him a reason to live, to take one day at a time. He was the one that gave me, because I've heard the phrase one day at a time, but
Right.
he would always tell me that all the time, just take one day at a time, one day at a time, Angel. Because I was always worrying about like tomorrow and what's going to happen.
Right.
And he would just tell me like, it's not, why work? We had to just take one day at a time.
Well, you'd mentioned why worry, which is unrelated to anything about this podcast, but I read a book in 1981, I think, The Erroneous Zones by Wayne Dyer. And he said if you do something and 98% of the times you do that, 99% of the time you do that, it doesn't work. What do you do? You stop doing it, right? Well, worry, 98% of the things we worry about never happen. So why do we worry? So I stopped worrying. I literally turned off my worry gene. So my wife now says she worries twice as much because I don't worry. So apparently she has to read the book. But anyway, but he's right. Worry is an unnecessary emotion in my mind.
Can be, yes.
But without a doubt. But with that said, so how do people get in contact with you?
So they can contact us through contacting us the old way, calling us on the phone, a landline or a cell phone.
Right.
They can contact us through social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn.
That's for the kids.
That's for the
For the seniors. So they use the phone. Is there a phone number that you have?
There's a phone number, yep, the 631-581-9000.
631-581-9000.
That's our general number.
Okay.
We also have a website that when they Google, senior care, we're one of the, top, resource that comes up.
What is the website?
It's www.seniorcarecompanions with an S at the end.com.
Perfect. Easy to remember.
And then they can read reviews. We have really great testimonials from caregivers, from clients, from family members. So they can contact us through that as well.
That's the thing to look for. They've now met you.
Yeah.
And now they get to read reviews from other people who've met you and other people in the firm and the people who come and work closely with them.
Correct.
And that's as important as you are in the company, it's the people who you bring in.
Yes.
They're the frontline people.
Absolutely.
And
yeah. So and then they can come in person. We have people walking into our office.
Oh, really?
We're in a place where we have several other professionals such as dentists, medical doctors. So people can, when they go there, there's exposure. So it helps. Yeah.
And how is this?
It's at 150 Islip Avenue.
Okay.
Islip.
Okay.
So the owner, he has his practice, Universal Health, that he offers chiropractor, PT, massage, acupuncture, and then the other suite is Senior Care Companions.
Oh, very good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate
I
it.
appreciate it. Thank you so much. It was an honor, and it was a pleasure. Thank you, Larry.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. If you've enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through. So if you are considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out to see how we can help. When working with us, you can sell your home in its current condition, there is no need to remove unwanted items, and you control when the house is sold, along with so many other advantages. Visit leavethekey.com or call us at 631-388-7771 to learn more about our senior home buying process.